Welcome everyone back to the Just Sayin Podcast, episode number 16. Great week of week 6 football. A lot of great games to cover, Jake, and we're going to jump right into it here. Game of the week, Oklahoma, Texas. What a game, back and forth. Usually I was talking to my roommate Robert, who's a big Texas fan, and we were talking about usually every year this game is like one of the most competitive rivalry games in college football. And this year it didn't disappoint. Last year, definitely a fluke. Obviously, Dylan Gabriel didn't play last season. But this year, Dylan Gabriel played, and boy, did he not get some vengeance.
No, it was a great game. Unfortunately, I couldn't really watch it due to Dish and ABC. I don't know what they have going on. I couldn't watch too much of it, but what I did see of it, amazing game. And both teams. I mean, I was watching Josh Pate before this. He was over there for the game in Dallas, I believe it was, and very chippy. And he spoke about it. I want to know your opinion on it. He said it is the best rivalry in college football. Do you agree with that as a Bama fan with the Iron Bowl and everything? I mean, undoubtedly this is top three, but do you believe it's number one?
I think the Iron Bowl is still number one. I would put this as number three. I would say Iron Bowl is number one, the game is number two, and this is number three. Now, I will say in recent years, this has been more of a competitive matchup just because I think both Oklahoma and Texas are kind of near similar stages in terms of where their program is. And honestly, you can even say Oklahoma is maybe a year behind Texas, and they ended up winning this game. Michigan and Ohio State has been a great rivalry the past 3 years, but Oklahoma, Texas has been the most consistent. Now, in the early 2010s, Alabama and Auburn were great football teams, and that was great. But Auburn has been pretty downhill here recently. So it hasn't been a great rivalry as of recent, but I do think it is worthy of a top three matchup or a top three rivalry. And it's been very competitive in very recent years. So and it didn't disappoint. And like you said, you weren't able to watch it, but I actually got to watch this whole game. And the biggest takeaway I took away was Dylan Gabriel is cementing himself in New York. I mean, he is a stud. He not only led the team in rushing with 14 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown, but was lethal in the passing game. 23 of 38, 285 yards and a touchdown, outdueling Quinn Ewers, who I thought was maybe one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Still think he is. Just had a really rough game and a rough start, and he really never recovered from it fully. And I do think if this game was to be played again on neutral field, and it very well could be, this could end up being your Big 12 matchup. I would probably still pick Texas to win the game. I still think Texas may end up being the better team, but you can't take away anything from what the Sooners did on Saturday. They were amazing. Looked like they were a complete team, a team that I didn't think they would be a complete team. And then they probably do have to get a little bit better on defense. They're not quite there yet, and they don't quite have the skill guys on offense that other teams are going to have. But they showed you they could fight and compete with the best of them.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, it was very evenly matched up. You said you would still favor Texas. I would still favor Oklahoma because in our prior show, I said that Oklahoma was going to cover and win. That's ended up what happened. However, I said I thought there was going to be something somewhere where Oklahoma gets a lucky touchdown or Texas gets an unfortunate turnover. That didn't really happen. I know Quinn Ewers had 2 picks in the first quarter and he had a fumble, but those were all plays made by Oklahoma. Texas one was the one that actually had the very own the, Texas was the one that had the very fortunate play where they had punt block touchdown for the very first touchdown of the game. So I would still have Oklahoma covering and winning against Texas. I mean, like you said, I didn't get to see too much of it, but Dylan Gabriel played his heart out. And Quinn Ewers, he didn't play awful, but he didn't play to the standard they needed him to. And Jordan Whittington, you said his name on the other show. Xavier Worthy, both of them went off, but Dylan Gabriel just way too much for him. And like you said, that defense needs to get a little bit better. But this Oklahoma team, they're good. I told you they're one of those top 10 teams now that can still win the Heisman. Sorry, not Heisman, the national championship.
Well, I definitely picked, and we'll get to the best bet section later. But of the three receivers you could pick for Texas, I picked the wrong one to get the yards. And I was really the Jordan Whittington number. I think it was sitting at 33 and a half. It looked very enticing, but I was like,
Couldn't take it.
had 140 yards last week. He's got to have at least 66 in the Red River shootout, and he didn't. He only had about half of that. So that was definitely disappointing. But overall, great game. Great, probably the game of the year so far. Probably the most fun game I've watched all season. And just in terms of the stakes and then how the game ended. Dylan Gabriel, I mean, you got to he is a tough player. He stood in that pocket and took some huge hits, and so did Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers took some huge hits. But go ahead. Sorry.
You mentioned it. He's kind of like Jackson Dart, where he just doesn't slide. Dude gets hit after hit after hit in the pocket, outside of the pocket. He doesn't slide. He's a tough player.
Jane Daniels is the same way. Jane Daniels has gotten popped more than I've ever seen. I do not know how that guy's head is still on his body, because he has been hit hard each game. So speaking of Jaden Daniels, how about LSU going into Missouri and winning in a thriller? I mean, at halftime of that game, obviously had Texas on one screen and LSU Missouri on the other. At halftime, if you would have told me that LSU would have won that game, I probably would have been really surprised. Now, did they have the firepower to do it? Absolutely. But Missouri was just controlling that game at halftime. And once they came out from the half, Missouri just kind of lost all that feel they had on offense. I think they regained it a little bit towards the end there, but LSU was full throttle that second half. And the Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. connection with Jaden Daniels is just undeniable. I mean, those guys are two of the best top 5 receivers in college football, probably. We all knew about Malik Neighbors heading into the year, but Brian Thomas Jr. really came on as one of the guys that you really got to watch out for. And I think it would have been a huge deal if LSU started this year 3-3, but now at 4-2, I mean, they still can upset some people's, rest of their season. I mean, if they win out, they'll represent the SEC West. They got to have a few other things happen, but you're not going to, if let's say they win out and go to the SEC championship and hypothetically beat Georgia. Okay. They're going to make the playoff. The SEC champion is going to be in the playoff, no matter if they're a 2-loss team or not. I don't care. Now, what LSU needs to figure out is they've got zero pulse on defense. Zero. Their defense is atrocious. Their defense reminds me of where Oklahoma was last year. That's kind of how they are. I mean, their defense is so bad. And if any team can throw the ball, and Brady Cook, I mean, we know, we talked about him last week. He can sling it with the best of them. But I mean, they're going to run into some trouble when they play another really good high-profile SEC team. If they were to play a Georgia, and we saw it with Ole Miss. I mean, teams that can really throw the ball, it's not going to look good for them. But they came out with the win on Saturday, and that's all that matters. It was ugly, but they did it.
Yeah, and this is a game where score doesn't really indicate what it really was, because LSU had a pick six with 10 seconds. I think it was 15 seconds left when Missouri was trying to march down the field. This was really a 3-point game, with LSU getting a last second touchdown against Missouri. But I mean, you mentioned it in the last show, battle of two of the top 3 wide receivers potentially in the nation, between Malik Neighbors and Luther Burden, and they did not disappoint. Yeah. Both of them went for about 145 yards. Malik Neighbors had a touchdown. And a battle of the two of the top 3 QBs in the SEC, in my opinion. I know Brady Cook had 2 interceptions, but dude was playing well.
The 2 best quarterbacks in the SEC.
Yeah, I know. I had Spencer Rattler at 2, but Brady Cook at 3 for me. I mean, this was a tremendous game. This was the game we had on, and it did not disappoint at all. Like you said, super close game. I don't know if LSU is still in the hunt for the playoff, because like you said, they don't have anything on defense.
They have Mason Smith. So, got it.
Mason
and Harold Perkins, but they're using him wrong. Harold Perkins is playing off the line. He's playing inside linebacker. He's better at edge than he is there.
The only part about that is, playing inside is way more important to a team. So yeah, he's not making plays he was last year, but he's doing a lot more for the team. So I think they have him in the right spot.
I'll counter that, and I say I think it speaks to the depth of the team. I mean, if they had a little bit better depth at inside linebacker, they could let Harold Perkins play his natural position, where he was a ball hawking dominant defensive player last year. I just don't think they had anybody at that position, so that Harold Perkins filling that need was kind of what they had to do. Yeah. Which is unfortunate for them, but maybe next year when they, Brian Kelly gets some more recruits in there, he'll go back to his real position.
Yeah, no, you're right. And this game, I was pulling for Mizzou so hard. It sets up a really good game between Missouri and Kentucky next week.
Yeah. A
I
game
really think that
Kentucky's favored in, by the way.
yeah, they are 2.5. That
Yeah.
game could go either way, in my opinion. It's at Kentucky, but that game's going to be tremendous to watch. Let's go to probably the number 3 game of the week. And I didn't get to watch much of this game. I watched the first half and then had to go line up at the gate. Let's go to College Station for your Alabama Elephants.
No, don't ever say that again. It's the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's not the Elephants. It's the Crimson.
What's a Crimson Tide, though?
It's a Crimson Tide. It's a Crimson Wake that's coming in. Georgia Bulldogs should know it's engulfed them quite a few times. So
time recently.
One time, Jake. One time. I'll remind you, Kirby is 1-4 against Nick Saban. I'll remind you.
2 in a row.
18. 18.
Anyway.
18-3.
Go ahead.
This is exactly what I wanted to see from Alabama this weekend. I was very impressed with the defense. Obviously, 2 takeaways from the defense. Malachi Moore, ankle injury. Don't really know the severity of it. If I had to guess, probably not going to play this upcoming week against Arkansas at homecoming, if I had to guess. But Terry and Arnold filled in very nicely. Malachi was having a great game up until he got taken out with his injury. And Terry filled in nicely. Trey Amos on the outside. We've seen it a couple times this year already. We've talked about it on this show a little bit. They both filled in very nicely. But that defense, I mean, like we've been saying, this is a national championship caliber defense, and they showed up and showed out again. Texas A&M was up 17-10 going into the half. They scored 3 points in the second half. So in the entire second half, that defense, without Malachi Moore for the majority of the second half, who's been the best player on the Alabama's team this year, I would say, as an observer and as a fan, he's been the best player on the team. And they didn't have their best player on defense, and they still balled out. I mean, and Caleb Downs, Jalen Milroe threw a horrible interception. Now, granted, he had probably 2 bad plays that game. And yes, while it was bad, you got to give the guy a break. I mean, he was playing his first humongous road start back in his home state, but horrible interception that they easily picked off. The very next play, Caleb Downs jumps a route, picks it off. We got the ball right back in red zone. I mean, it was beautiful to watch. I mean, he's a true freshman out of the state of Georgia that has just picked up this defense, the defensive scheme, and has ran with it. And he's been a joy to watch. Really loved watching him play the football this year. But that front 7, I mean, they could not run the ball. Neither could we. Neither team was running the ball. This was basically Jalen Milroe versus Max Johnson. Whoever's the better thrower is going to win this football game. And our Max Johnson, got to give him credit. He hung in there. He took some hits. He was under duress the whole game, but he stood in there and made some really tough throws. Nia Smith was great. Evan Stewart was great, but our defense made more stops than theirs did. They're just simply a little bit more talented than A&M was. And on the road in a really hostile environment. I mean, you know how hostile some of those type of environments can get. 108,000 fans at Kyle Field. I mean, it's pretty insane. So my main thing was that the defense has continued to get better, and then Jalen Milroe continued to get better. This is his best game he's ever had in college. 21 of 33 for 321 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick, and he didn't have one. I think he had maybe 2 or 3 carries this entire game. I mean, he showed you what he could do in the pocket, slicing and dicing a defense, and he threw the ball downfield emphatically the entire game. And I think another thing he found his number 1 receiver. That's Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton, this is exactly what every Alabama fan thought he was going to be when he came over from Georgia. That performance. Yes, he had a fumble, and it was very bad, but 9 catches for 197 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, he was just – we were picking on their DBs the whole game. We were throwing balls up 50-50 to Jermaine Burton, and he was coming down with almost every single one of them. He was awesome. He was making guys miss. He was running great routes. He was just – it was awesome to see, especially since we haven't really had a number 1 receiver in the last few years, ever since Jamison Williams and John Mechie. So Jermaine Burton kind of filling that void was a great thing to see, especially when we couldn't run the ball. So we knew we had to throw it to win it, and we did. Jalen Milroe was great. So my takeaway is the defense, national championship caliber, and is only getting better as time goes. Jalen Milroe only getting better, and he's now found his number 1 target in Jermaine Burton. Alabama is progressing as a team. Like I said, that USF game, bad game, right? But I said, this is not what Alabama is going to look like towards the end of the year. And you can tell they are already miles ahead of where they were in week 3, just from week 6. And this team is only going to get better and better. And it's going to be scary for the rest of college football because you don't want a pissed off Nick Saban and a pissed off Alabama team, and you're getting one. So I love the tenacity and the resilience from this group. And I just can't wait to keep watching them play. It's been a joy.
Yeah, this seemed like it was a very evenly matched up game through the first half, and looking like through the whole game. I mean, both teams 4 for 12 on third downs, not great. Both teams couldn't rush the ball. Bama had 0.9 yards per rush, A&M 1.9 yards. The thing that scares me about Alabama is it's not the players. They have potentially the best roster in football. It's not the coach. It's not the coaches. They have potentially the best coaches in football. To me, it is the what's the word? I can't think of the word, but they draw so many flags now, and it's not the team that they've been in the past where penalties, they had 14 for 99, and I can't remember how many they had against Texas. I believe it was over 100 yards worth of penalties. And you look back, and a lot of the big games they play, that's what they've been doing, and they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot, and they have to battle back from those mistakes. So if they can clean that up, I mean, they're a top 5 team. They're a top 5 team in the country. But I mean,
that's been a problem we've seen like over the last couple of years. I mean, we saw it last year against
that's what I'm saying.
Texas. Yeah. It hasn't been much of a problem at home. And I think I kind of, and you mentioned the Texas game earlier this year. I think that's a lot of it being early in the year. And I still think this team's maturity isn't where it needs to be, right? I mean, I think that's pretty obvious. But going back to your point on the third down conversions, 4 of 12, I think like at the end of the third quarter, we were like 4 of 8 on third downs. So we went like 0 of 4 in the fourth quarter. But the reason why is because we never really got in third down positions because we were literally throwing 50-yard passes every other play. I mean, it was Jalen Milroe's arm had to have been hurting. I know he threw the ball like 40 or 50 yards in the air like 5 or 6 times that game. I mean, it was crazy. So, but you're exactly right. The penalties are probably the most concerning thing to me, and I think to Alabama fans in general.
And that's one of the things. It's better to watch the game. I'm just box score scouting. That's pretty much all I can do since I wasn't able to watch it. And I did watch the highlights. And I don't know. You don't sound concerned at all about it, so I'm not going to be concerned. But Jalen Milroe did not run the ball at all. I don't know because I know he had a great game passing, but that A&M secondary is not very good. Their front seven's great. You know, they had 5 sacks. Yeah. Bama had 6 sacks, but that A&M secondary is not great. And so I don't think he will be able to pass the ball on a better defense. So I mean, was it the play calling why he didn't run the ball, or was it his maturity, him just not taking off? I was just very confused when I look at the box score, and he has 8 essentially 2 rushes, because it says 8 for negative 31, but he got sacked 6 times.
Well, like we were talking, I mean, you always hear the saying stats can lie, and I think stats kind of lie to you in this scenario. So first off, I don't know if I mentioned on the show, but I know we were texting about it earlier last week. He did kind of have a hamstring problem in practice last week. A lot of people said it was just false. Well, apparently there was some validity behind it. A lot of people said that he may not even play in this game, and that we may just see Ty Simpson the whole game, but obviously able to make it go. But he was definitely limited. You could tell the way he was moving. He wasn't moving as well in the pocket as he typically does. But also, I think credit to the A&M front 7. They contained him well. I mean, they were majority of the times where he had opportunities to take off, they had guys rushing him in the front, and they had the outside covered. So he couldn't really move left or right. He just had to kind of take a sack. And like 4 or 5 of those sacks where literally nobody was open downfield. He had nothing he could do downfield. He couldn't escape the pocket. And it wasn't bad protection. They just had literally encompassed him in a circle where he could not leave unless he ran straight backwards. So I credit Jimbo Fisher's I don't even know who the defensive coordinator is over there, but I'll give him kudos because the defensive scheme that they have, they really were able to contain him and spy him very well throughout the game. And now it's something we've talked about that you'll think is pretty funny. A couple of those deep touchdown passes, they only rushed 3, and they had a spy on him, and he threw it deep, and Isaiah Bond was wide open. I mean, nobody was even in a 10-yard radius of him. And then
I saw him.
Yeah, and he had a deep throw to Jermaine Burton. They rushed 3, one-on-one coverage on the outside, threw it right into the breadbasket, right over the DB's head. I mean, it was. I don't understand why teams are doing that. Especially if they're. I don't care if it could be a rumor or not, but if you hear maybe Jalen Milrose a little nicked up going into this game, I am bringing the house to see if he can run out of the pocket and see if he can stand in there and take a hit when he knows he may be a little banged up. And they just didn't do it. And I was kind of surprised at that. But I think he can pass against those really good teams. I really do. I think he really was not a threat to run the ball at all this weekend. And I think A&M kind of knew that to a degree by the way they played him. And he was still able to dice them up. Now, yes, their secondary isn't that great, but I think if he is fully healthy and he's back there and he can run the ball, he's gotten better. He's made better decisions. The interception, he should have thrown a bullet pass instead of he kind of lobbed it up. I don't think he saw the free safety. But if he would have thrown a bullet pass, Mari Niblack's probably scoring a touchdown right there. So I think that was just a bad choice in how to throw the football. But he made a lot of checks at the line of scrimmage. He killed. Jake, I didn't know what I was seeing. He went up to the line of scrimmage and killed 4 plays in a row and threw an audible in. He was channeling his Bryce Young. I think all Alabama fans were like, he audibled? Like, what? We hadn't seen that all year. And then, he was just smart with the football. And he protected the football when he was getting sacked. He didn't fumble. He fumbled one time. He got absolutely blown up in the back by some dude. And thankfully, we had a guy there to stay on the ball. But I thought Jalen played great. I think all Alabama fans now are thinking he's the guy. I mean, we all know that he's the guy now. So
yeah, he showed a lot of maturity. He's showed a lot of maturity in throwing the ball. I mean, the highlights I watched, he was dropping dimes. Made a couple of bad throws. Most notably the interception.
Yeah.
But again, it's like I said I think we did the show on Thursday. This A&M team, I know it's a road start. Kyle Field is loud. This A&M team just isn't that great. I don't know why they always get hyped up. We just found out Miami lost to Georgia Tech. Did you see the way that game ended?
Oh, that was crazy.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean, he was down. That wasn't a fumble. But still, Miami lost to Georgia Tech. This team lost to Miami by 15. A&M's not very good, but I mean, it's the same thing I said with Auburn. Whenever Georgia played,
yeah,
you're going in there. You're going in there, and it's really your first. I'm gonna call it Jalen Milrose's first real road start because Mississippi State. It's loud, but Mississippi State sucks.
Hold on, now I think A&M's a good team. I really do think they're. I think they're on the verge of top 25. They really are a player in the West. I mean, they could beat LSU. They could beat Ole Miss. You don't think they could? They could.
No, I think they could, but they have to.
They could compete. If Georgia went to A&M, it would be a close game too. They would compete with you guys. They really would. At Kyle Field, they would. Now, if they played in Athens or if they played in Tuscaloosa, I think both games look a lot different. And I think this is a great segue into the game we're about to talk about here as Kentucky and Georgia. Obviously, Georgia's the better team. It's not even close. But I think Georgia at home is a great team. I mean, they're good on the road too. But we saw them struggle a lot against Auburn on the road. And Auburn is not near as good as Kentucky. It's not even close. Kentucky would storm Auburn. And Georgia at home ended up winning 51-13 over Kentucky. And exactly what we talked about. It played in. Ray Davis, 15 carries, 59 yards, could not run up the middle. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen. And Devin Leary has not been good enough to beat Georgia. 10 of 26 for 128, 2 touchdowns. So just analyzing the Kentucky side, it was never going to happen. I don't really understand why some people were hyping this game up. And I looked at this game and did not understand. Georgia was going to win this game by a long shot. That's why my lock of the week last week was Georgia to cover. So, and it happened. So 2 weeks in a row that I bet on that. But go ahead, talk about your guy Carson Beck and his connection with Brock Bowers. I mean, lethal.
Real quick, you mentioned it. Just going back to Texas A&M real quick. I think they can beat LSU. I think they can beat Ole Miss. I think they are potentially a borderline top 25 team. The difference is they haven't proven a single thing at all. They didn't do it 2 years ago. They didn't do it last year. They haven't done it this year. If they do that, they will be in my top 25. But they haven't done any sort of thing. The only thing they've done is lost to Miami. That is it. But no, this game, dominant. I mean, we scored on the first 3 possessions, I think, all 3 touchdowns. Carson
Most
Beck,
complete performance.
do what?
Most complete performance I've seen all year.
No, I know. It was great. I mean, Kentucky, they got bailed out one time on, I think it was their first touchdown. You probably didn't see it. They called a horrific roughing the passer on Warren Britson on 2nd and 10 at the 50. So it took them to their 35. Devin Leary didn't even go down. He didn't hit him in the head. He went for his arm, tried to smack the ball out, and for some reason got called with a roughing passer. Anyway, yeah, like you said, dominant performance. Carson Beck, he looked like he did in the second half against Auburn. That's what I said. I think he grew up a lot against Auburn. And I think if we went to Jordan-Hare this upcoming week, we would destroy them. Because I just think he needed to get that game under his belt. And like you said, that connection with Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers had 7 receptions, 132 yards and touchdown. Best player in college football. I don't think it's close, especially with Caleb Williams, how he struggled this weekend. Caleb Williams still the best QB in college football, but Brock Bowers, I mean, positional value aside, just I don't think it's very close. But the thing for me, so Carson Beck, he absolutely went off. In my opinion, he played the best out of any QB this weekend, maybe aside from Dylan Gabriel, but he had 28 for 35 with 389 yards, 4 touchdowns, and an interception. But in the first half, he was 21 for 26 with, I think, 309 yards, maybe a little bit less. So he was absolutely eating. But my favorite part about it, Ra Thomas, transfer from Mississippi State, hasn't really been involved this year, was just needing to learn the playbook. I think it's because he came from an air raid system where he didn't know how to run a pro style offense. And so the first few weeks, he was ramping up on how to do that. And now we see he's out there on probably 50% of snaps, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but he had 5 receptions for 63 yards and an amazing touch. Did you see his touchdown catch?
Yeah.
It was crazy. Yeah. Head top. But yeah, like you said, complete performance. And you might look at our rushing yards and see Dejon Edwards only 54, Kendall Milton only 47, 1 touchdown between the two of them. But we were running the ball effectively. I mean, they had 17 carries for over 100 yards. Dejon Edwards was averaging 6 yards a carry and Kendall Milton 5.9. So, I mean, we were moving the ball however we wanted to. And defensively, I know we gave up 13 points, which is a lot for this defense. And Ray Davis had a pretty nice receiving touchdown. But I mean, still a dominant performance. We had 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. No turnovers, unfortunately, but we didn't need any the way we were playing this game. It was, like you said, complete performance, and they looked like the best team in the country this past weekend.
A quick note on Ray Davis, like you said, I don't think this performance really takes away from anything he's done. He had a very nice touchdown catch, and he's a great running back. But we all knew what was going to happen when this Georgia front went up against the UK front. When you're playing, we talked about last week, strength to strength. Georgia and their talented players are always going to outmatch these 3 or 4 star guys that weren't as high ranking in college or in high school going into college. But this was a classic. Almost what I've seen from Alabama in rushing this year. Subtract the quarterback run, Dejon Edwards, Kendall Milton. These numbers are what Jace McCullough and Roydell Williams has had all year, where the stat sheet absolutely lies to you. But you know that when y'all ran the football, you could count on at least 3 or 4 yards, and you were just going to slowly and methodically make these long drives where you just ran the ball if you needed to. Am I right? Is that kind of what you were getting at earlier when you were talking about running?
Not completely.
Obviously, y'all are a better passing team than Alabama, but
no, I'm
you
saying
could run the ball if you needed to.
Yeah, I'm saying we weren't expecting 3 to 4. The way we were running, we were getting 7 to 8 about every time. And so, I mean, our yards per carry, it was 5.95 between the two of them. We were running however we wanted to. So I mean, I don't know what it's looked like from Alabama's perspective, but we were running all over them. This was a sneaky 608 yards the whole game, and they only had 183. Like I said, absolute blowout, dominant across the board.
Beck was great. Beck was awesome, but I don't think the UK secondary is very good. Kind of like the A&M. That's why I would say there's a few quarterbacks who had more impressive weekends just because of the level of competition they were playing. Dylan Gabriel being that guy. I do think Missouri's secondary is better than UK secondary. And we saw what Jaden Daniels is capable of. And We'll get back to Jaden Daniels later. I'm sure he's probably worthy of a helmet sticker, don't you think? And I think Carson Beck and Dylan Gabriel are as well. And maybe we'll see him later. But yeah, Georgia complete performance. Obviously, the running could be better. And if they want to be a complete team, Dejan and Kendall Milton, I'm sure they'll turn it up here pretty soon. But also the way UK wants to play defense is fit for their front seven. So not worried about Georgia at all. In fact, they'll probably jump in my rankings a lot. But I want to get to that game. Just we'll touch on it real quick. That Georgia Tech Miami. What was Mario Cristobal thinking?
I don't know.
Why would you not just knee the ball? I don't understand. I don't understand that. He literally just cost them. Like literally, they cannot screw up anymore. But they cannot screw. They have no margin for error now the rest of the year because they were undefeated in the ACC, a conference that still is kind of wide open.
Look, I'm not always right in my football takes. Sometimes I am dead wrong. But when it comes to either a Miami or a Texas A&M, I am 100% right every time so far. In Miami, I don't think Mario Cristobal is a good coach. I don't think Miami's a good team. Like I said, people were going to take away from the A&M Miami game that whoever won it is essentially back. No, it just meant the loser of it is nowhere close to being back. That didn't mean Miami was good. And yeah, even though that probably wasn't a fumble, Georgia Tech was in this game up until then. And there's a reason they won it on that last touchdown. So I didn't really see the stats. I just saw how the game ended, and it was crazy.
Give Brent Keys some credit. I mean, he's really brought in some good transfers, and Haynes King. I mean, another thing about A&M, Haynes King looked better at Georgia Tech than he ever did it at A&M with a so-called quarterback whisperer in Jimbo Fisher. I mean, he looks a lot better at Georgia Tech than he ever did there. And a funny note, the receiver for the winning touchdown for Georgia Tech, don't know if you recognize the name, Christian Leary, former Alabama receiver.
I didn't know he was the one that
caught the 44-yard touchdown pass for Georgia Tech to beat Miami. Obviously, stunner of a game. And I think it was just funny as Christian Leary's laying on the ground after he catches the ball. You just see water bottles being thrown at him up from the stands. It was so funny. But another game I want to touch on really quick: Arizona and USC. What the heck? I'm at Rhythm and Brews in Tuscaloosa at 1 a.m. and I see that this game is in 3 overtimes. And I'm like, what? Arizona? How in the world? Arizona has now done this 2 weeks in a row where they've given two of the Pac-12's premier teams a scare. They're sitting at 3-3. USC now at 6-0. But I mean, Arizona with their backup quarterback threw for 303 yards, 5 touchdowns and a pick. Had better stats than Caleb Williams. He was better than Caleb Williams in this game, and it showed. I mean, I don't know if this was just a classic look-over game. I know they've got Notre Dame next week, and we'll definitely preview that matchup. But, I mean, Jake, were they just looking over Arizona, waiting on the Notre Dame game? Or do you think that USC maybe – are they just not it?
Look, I told you, I don't know if it was the last show. It was probably a week ago when I said it. There were 12 teams that could have won it. And they were my top 12, there were 11 teams that could have won it. And they were my top 11, except for USC. USC was the only team I didn't think could win the national championship. And this showed why. I mean, their offense is better than this. Yeah. Caleb Williams, I know he didn't play that great, but he's better than that. But their defense, giving up 41 to this team. And you mentioned it, Arizona played Washington tight last week. But it wasn't like this. You look at the box score in Arizona, and I mean, I watched this game too, for the most part. Arizona were handling this USC Trojan team. You look at it, 28 first downs to 23, 506 yards to 365, had more rushing and passing yards. They honestly got killed by their penalties. They had 12 for 99, and they won TOP as well. And so this was just one of those games, and it was 17-0 at one point in the first half, before USC brought it back to 17-14 going into halftime. But dude, I don't know. USC just – they're not it. Bear Alexander, not a great player this year.
I love how you bring him up every show. You find a way to work Bear Alexander into every show.
It's not very hard. I'm referencing.
Most hated on player by Jake is Bear Alexander.
No, that's Joe Milton. Bear Alexander's number 2. But it's not hard whenever you're talking about one of the worst Power 5 defenses, and they have one of the best Power 5 offenses. Because
Yeah.
you brought him in expecting he was going to be a playmaker, and he's been nothing of the sort. I would say he's probably been an average D lineman. He hasn't sucked, but he has not been that game record, that game changer that you would expect. So I don't know. USC dropped even more in my rankings. They've dropped every single week, I think, the past 4 weeks. This week more than they typically have. I don't think this was a fluke. They might have been looking past Arizona just a little bit because they have Notre Dame. But I think Notre Dame, even though they lost to Louisville, which we'll talk about, I think Notre Dame handles USC.
Well, let's get into that Notre Dame Louisville game right now. Obviously, I mean, give credit to the Louisville Cardinals, a sneaky 6-0. Jeff Brom's first year bringing in Jack Plummer, both of them from Purdue. And they were able to run the ball, they were able to throw the ball, and they played great on defense. And this Notre Dame defense, obviously, they probably are very, very exhausted from the tough schedule they've had. I mean, they've had to play Ohio State, they've had to play Duke. Now they're playing Louisville, got USC next week. Classic lookover game. But I don't believe that they looked over a 5-0 Louisville team who came into this game ranked. And this also raises, for me, it raises more questions about Ohio State too, because Louisville scored almost twice as many points as Ohio State did against Notre Dame. Now, yes, Ohio State was on the road against Notre Dame, but the caliber athlete is completely different at Ohio State than it is at Louisville. I mean, no disrespect to the guys at Louisville, but it is. I mean, that's just kind of how it is. Sam Hartman looked kind of lost in this game, 3 picks. Did have 2 touchdowns where he was his normal self, but he made some very uncharacteristic plays. Plays that definitely cost Notre Dame some valuable points in this game, maybe even the game. They weren't able to run the ball, and I think that's kind of a padlock stat right there. I mean, Estime wasn't even their leading rusher. Their leading rusher was Love, who only had 37 yards. So Notre Dame has got to run the ball in order to have success on offense. Sam Hartman can't do it all. And like you said, and you made a great point about this in last week's show, he doesn't have the guys on the outside that we may have thought he would. And they're going to have to be able to pick up some slack in the run game in order to help Sam Hartman out and that defense out as well. I mean, I was looking at time of possession, and it was pretty similar, 28 minutes to 31 minutes. So I mean, it really just comes down to, I think they just weren't able to run the ball in this game, and Sam Hartman made one too many mistakes.
Yeah. And I mean, you just mentioned it. That was my concern going into the year, going into this game, going into every single game. I didn't know if they had the weapons on the outside. I haven't heard about any of them. I didn't see any of them play. They needed to prove it, and they have not been able to prove it. And I mean, there was a reason. Don't get me wrong. Sam Hartman, great player, great pickup for Notre Dame. But there's a reason he was never in my top 5 quarterbacks. I don't know if he was ever in my top 10. He's, like I said, great player, but not the game changer that they need. Because whenever you can't run the ball like this, whenever you don't have the weapons on the outside, can you create and make plays? And I think he showed that he can't really do that. Because Ohio State, he needed to be able to do that. He couldn't. Louisville, he needed to do it. He couldn't. He didn't even do it against Duke. I mean, Notre Dame's defense was just being they were super stout though. They were super stout the whole game, and so. I mean, next week, whenever he's going up against a bad USC team, bad USC defense, he's going to have to step up for them and play better. And, they're out of the playoff contention now, but they still got a schedule ahead of them. I mean, they still have USC, they still have Clemson. They still have things to fight for. And they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. I think Louisville was super slept on. Jack Plummer, maybe not the best QB, but got the job done, played well. Louisville won this game on the ground. You'll probably mention him later, but Jahar Jordan, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, 21 carries for 143 yards, 2 touchdowns, ran all over that Notre Dame defense, which I was not expecting. So, I mean, Louisville looked like a great team. They could be a player for that ACC championship.
Well, I think Jack Plummer and Graham Mertz are about the same quarterback.
I agree.
They are just great game managers. They know what they're supposed to do, what's expected out of them, and they do their job pretty well. Now let's end the review section on a very sad note. My Washington State Cougars.
Both your top, or 2 out of your top 3 teams dropped this weekend. Sad.
Washington State Cougars took a 25-17 loss to UCLA. And what have we been saying? all year. No run game.
Dimensional. One
No run game.
dimensional.
And it showed 11 carries for 25 yards for Watson, the leading rusher. They left Cam Ward out on an island to do everything by himself, and he kind of showed he might not be able to do that at all times. And don't get me wrong, neither quarterback in this game was good. But I think what really gave UCLA the win is you look in that rushing line. I mean, kind of like Notre Dame, Louisville. You look at the rushing line. Carson Steele for UCLA, 30 carries for 140 yards.
Workhorse.
He's a great. I don't know if you've ever watched him play. He's a guy. He's a guy. He can play.
Transfer from Ball State.
Yeah, and UCLA is a little bit better on offense, definitely better on defense. But Washington State, I mean, they aren't going to win anything being one-dimensional, especially in a conference like that with USC, Oregon, Washington, UCLA. Utah's another defense that they're going to have to end up playing. Oregon State, I mean, they've already beat Oregon State, but Pac-12 is loaded in its last year. And Washington State is going to – and they're not – I'll go ahead and just spoil it for you. They're not going to develop a run game the rest of the year. They're going to put everything on Cam Ward's shoulders. So I hope that this team can go 9-3 or 10-2 because they've got good talent on offense. They just can't run the ball, and that's just kind of how it is. And they got outplayed on defense, and that's just and yes, they were on the road, but that's just kind of what it boiled down to. So sad day for me.
I'm sorry, Sutton. I that's what I've been saying this year ever since I started looking at Wazoo. Ever since I put them in my top 25, I told you I didn't want to put them there. Put them in my top 25. Didn't put them too high, just because they never had a run game. And against a great team, I know they beat Oregon State, and Oregon State, they're my team. They're a great team. Going to be higher than Wazoo now, but they beat them with their one-dimensional team, but it wasn't going to be able to last. And UCLA, with a probably slightly better defense than Oregon State, they showed it this game. And I didn't get to watch it, but I assume they put a lot on Cam Ward's shoulders.
They did.
And he I don't want to say he choked under pressure, but he cracked under it. And Washington State, they still have their season in front of them. Maybe I know you said they're not going to develop a run game. I don't think they are.
No, they're not.
But let's entertain the idea and say they do develop a run game. Say they become dimensional and multiple as an offensive front. They still have everything to play for. If they win out, they can still be in the playoff. But that's a long ways away.
Long shot. It's a long shot, especially in this conference.
Yeah, especially in this conference. They can't make the playoff. They can't make the Pac-12 championship by rushing for 12 yards per game. That's just crazy.
I'll tell you this. I think if you put Washington State and Oregon State, the two left out of the Pac-12, you throw them in the ACC, they may be the two best teams in the ACC.
Oh, I agree.
Florida State, yes, Florida State's up there, but I still think very shaky on Florida State. I'm a little bit more confident in Washington State than I would be in Florida State. But obviously Florida State, a little bit more pedigree. They're undefeated. I'll give them the respect that's due. But
the only reason I would disagree, Washington State would be number 3 in the ACC for me. Actually, probably number 4. I just think a Clemson and a FSU would destroy their.
Did you see Clemson this weekend?
I know. That would be a very low scoring game.
No, I just don't. Dude, Clemson may be done. They may be toast.
They barely squeaked it out against Wake Forest.
But I'll tell you this, good review section, but I'm definitely glad we renamed it the best bet section before last week because, hey, we can flex on it. This week, another very good week out of both of us. On the bets that I proposed, I went 4 of 6. And I think the bets, did you go undefeated again?
I went undefeated again. That's 10 for 10 in the last 2 weeks.
Wow, look at this guy. Okay.
I might have to start putting my own money down there.
Wow. Well, my lock of the week actually wasn't Georgia, Kentucky. I forgot. It was the Michigan, Minnesota at 20.5. And I think Michigan ended up winning by like 40 something.
Yes, 42, I think.
Michigan's a pretty easy bet right now, kind of whatever their line is. So I obviously won the Michigan. I think both of us put down Michigan. Both of us put down Georgia to cover the 14.5. Obviously,
that was my
that. So yeah, both bets of the week hit. Now I was called crazy, Jake, for saying Arkansas was going to cover against Ole Miss, and they did. They covered the 11 by only losing by.
Hey, I didn't call you crazy.
Not you. No, not you. I've been called crazy by a few of our viewers to think that Arkansas was going to hang. To think that Arkansas was going to hang in this game. They did it against LSU. They were able to do it against Ole Miss. Arkansas plays at Alabama this upcoming week. Right now, the spread is at 19.5.
It's a lot of points.
That's a lot of points. So we'll see where we end up taking that. I think that might be a best bet, or at least we'll talk about it on the show.
I thought
Go ahead.
I just thought you were saying I called you crazy because I picked Ole Miss to cover. I knew Arkansas was going to hang in there for the majority of the game. I just thought Ole Miss was going to win by 14. So I knew it was going to be around that line. That's why Vegas knows.
And I'm pretty pissed off at Deion Sanders in Colorado against Arizona State, a team that they should have handled, a team that they were talking crap to at the end of the game. Colorado was favored by 4 points. They won by 3, and I took Colorado. So pissed at them. So pissed at them.
Did you see Shadur Sanders flexing his watch to the Arizona State suit?
And I will give him a little bit, just because you don't know, you weren't there, you don't hear what they were saying. They could have said some stuff to him. I'm sure they did. I mean, everyone is. But yeah, it's not a good look. It's not.
My thing is, Shadur's a future first rounder. Who cares what an Arizona State student says to you? No one cares.
Yeah. And I think it's just kind of what he's done his whole life, though. I mean,
And he's grown up with his daddy's money. He's grown up rich because of Deion. And why are you going to flex I don't know how much his watch costs, but probably tens of thousands.
More money than I have.
I can guarantee you more money than I have. So I just think it's classless. I'm not a big fan of Colorado anymore. I was so high on them coming into the season. Now just not anymore.
Now, what were the other games that you proposed? I know you had a couple other ones.
I had Oregon State minus 9.5, and they won by 12. A little bit closer.
I think I had them too. So yeah,
you did a little bit closer than I thought it was going to be. So those were the only 2 games I had, and then I also went 2 for 2 on my player props. Like you said, I picked one of the 2 best players to have for that Texas wide receiver core, Xavier Worthy, over 76.5. You actually said the under on him. And then
I thought his role would be the role that AD Mitchell ended up having, because I had AD Mitchell for 66.5 and he only had half of that with 33. So we both had those flopped. So
we both said the over on AD Mitchell and neither one of those hit. And then I said, well, you agreed with me, but we both had 270.5 Dylan Gabriel over passing yards. And then unfortunately you were right on Luke Altmaier.
I got a high school football game, turned it on. There's 7 minutes left. I look at the stat sheet. He hasn't thrown a pick. First play, he throws a pick as soon as I turned it on. And I was going nuts in my apartment. I was like, there's no way he just did that. I think that's probably that should have been my lock of the week. This dude is garbage. I understand why Lane Kiffin didn't want him now. So he can sit over there in Illinois with Brett Bielema. He's just going to keep making me rich with his half interception prop bets every week. So
man, that's so unfortunate. When did he have his interception?
There was like 7 or 5 minutes left in the game when he threw it. And dude, he rolled out right, Jake. He rolled out right. There was nobody there. He just threw it straight to the Nebraska dude. Just straight to him. There was nobody even covering him.
Just around 8 minutes left in the game.
Yep. Unfortunate. It was bad. But good week for best bets for both of us. Let's hand out some helmet stickers.
It's officially best bets again because I'm 10 for 10 the last 2 weeks in my bets.
Let's hand out some helmet stickers, Jake.
Let's do it. Do you want me to go first or you?
How about you? You start us off.
Yeah.
Go ahead and give us your Georgia bias. We know who you're going to pick here. Go ahead and give it to us.
Oh, I was going to save him for last, but this one's not biased. You can call Kamari Lassiter against South Carolina. You can call that bias. You can't call Brock Bowers bias against Auburn. But Carson Beck had himself a day. I haven't said it before. You could have given it to him against Auburn. Do you know he has more yards than Caleb Williams on the year?
The only problem I have is they aren't a good secondary. That's just the only problem I have. See, the guys I pick are playing against really good competition. And yes, Kentucky's a good team, but as good as well as I do, their secondary is not good. Their secondary is not good. Jalen scored 300 against Kentucky.
Look, I guarantee you can go back to your prior weeks. There's somebody that faced a bad defense, that was facing a bad offense that you gave a helmet sticker to.
We'll have to do some research on that and get back with you guys on Thursday.
Yeah, we'll do it because I guarantee you there's at least one. But Carson Beck, 28 for 35, 389 yards with 4 touchdowns. Like I said, he was 21 for 26 with, I think, 306 yards in the first half. So, I mean, he was just dicing up that Kentucky defense. And I get it. Their defense, their secondary is not great, but they have a good defense. they have a solid SEC defense. I know the secondary is not the best, but that front seven is. And he was dicing them up. And people have been hating on Carson since he was named the starter. They want, Georgia fans included, they just want to see Brock Vandagriff roll out there. But he's sat his time and he deserves it. And he had himself a game against Kentucky. And I think the hatred for him is over. I think he's earned his respect. And we're going to see performances like this for the rest of the year. And like I said, he has more yards than Caleb Williams. And I don't think people understand that. He has played after the way Caleb Williams played against USC, he has played better than him this year.
The fourth most passing yards in college football by any quarterback belongs to Carson Beck. Now, what's crazy is, so Shadur is first. I think he has like 2,025 yards. Michael Penix is second with like 1,990 yards. And he's played in one less game than all the other quarterbacks, two less games than Caleb Williams, which is crazy to think of.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go for my first helmet sticker. I think the best performance of the day, and that is Jawar Jordan, the running back out of Louisville. Want to talk about strength on strength. What does Notre Dame really get at on defense? That's their front seven. And what has Louisville been really good at on offense? That's been running the football. And Jawar Jordan in that Louisville front took it to that Notre Dame front seven. 21 carries for 143 yards. So that's about 6.8 yards a carry, 2 touchdowns. Pivotal performance from him in a game that Louisville fans I know will probably remember forever. I mean, Notre Dame going inside their stadium. How often does that happen with such a historic and storied franchise or program like Notre Dame is? You know, Jawar Jordan, great performance. Can't say enough about it. Louisville 6-0, really have everything in front of them for the rest of the year and could be a major contender in the ACC. So only time will tell.
Yeah. And I actually have 4 helmet stickers. I probably should have told you that. But I'm going to save my number 1 helmet sticker for last. My next one, I'm giving it to Trey Benson, Florida State running back, who has not played well this year. Thought he was going to play a lot better. Had a great day against, who did they play? Was it
Virginia Tech?
Virginia Tech. Not a good team. I know we just talked about, trying to give it to teams that play better defenses, better offenses. But he had 11 carries for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. So averaging about 10 yards a carry and had two touchdowns on the ground was a pivotal part in that win. I know Virginia Tech sucks. Virginia Tech is really bad. But a great day for Trey Benson. Maybe he can turn the season around because he was thought to be probably top 2 running backs in the ACC coming in, and he hasn't been that so far. So maybe this is his turning point.
Yeah, definitely surprising. I definitely thought he'd be a kind of a key cog in that machine at Florida State this year, and he really hasn't been. But I'm going to give my second helmet sticker to a guy who we've seen on this helmet sticker session already this year, a guy who I kind of hated on at the beginning of the year for not being in what I thought was a Heisman caliber quarterback. But, man, he sure proved me wrong. That's Jaden Daniels, quarterback at LSU. 15 of 21 passing for 259 yards. So that's about 12.3 average for 3 touchdowns. Also in the run game, great day. 15 carries for 130 yards, so about 8.7 a carry for a touchdown. So he accounted for 4 touchdowns in a pivotal game against Missouri, a game that he got kind of hurt in. He has been taking shots all season. He does not know how to slide, and it's going to end up costing him soon. I really do think that. I mean, he's got to learn how to get down. He got hurt against Georgia last year for doing the same thing. Obviously, they have really good backup in Nussmeier. He actually had to play a little bit for Daniels in this game. But, Jane Daniels, he's really proved me wrong. He's hands down the best quarterback in the SEC. I don't think it's close. I think Brady Cook is second, but I still think Jane Daniels is a little bit above him, kind of in a tier of his own. If only LSU was a little bit better on defense, he'd probably be at top of the Heisman race right now, but they're not. So sucks for him, but they're literally going to have to score at least 45 a game just to win. So good luck the rest of the year.
Coming into the season, you put Joe Milton in a tier of his own. I think it's the same deal, just with the right QB now. Where Jaden Daniels, I had him number 1 coming into the year, but it was kind of in a tier with 2 other people. Didn't really know where he ranked in there. I had him number 1, but it was very close. Now it's not very close, but like you said, he's got to learn to get down, or else he's not going to have a career very soon. Yeah, because he takes hit after hit after hit,
and it certainly helps to have those guys he's got on offense too, though.
100%.
Touched on it.
That's also what I said coming into the year. Probably the best wide receiver core in the nation, and it's proven that, especially probably the best duo in the nation.
Which is
Second best.
crazy to think that. I mean, LSU's receiving cores look better than Ohio State's has this year, and I think
Yeah.
it does have something to do with the quarterback. I mean, I'd throw Jane Daniels in there before Kyle McCord any day.
Oh
Ohio
yeah.
State's probably a little bit more talented, but LSU's shown up this year when they've needed him to. So
Yeah. But let me show some love to my my WKU. I don't even know their
your
mascot.
Hilltoppers.
Hilltoppers. So my WKU Hilltoppers. Malachi Corley. He was the name I was looking out for in the beginning of the year because he had a great year last year. But he had 8 receptions for 207 yards and 3 touchdowns. And this wasn't a blowout. And again, they're not going up against a great team either. They're playing Louisiana Tech, who I believe aren't even favored against Jacksonville State this weekend. But I mean, like I said, Louisiana Tech, not a great team, but this was a 1-score game. So it was a game that Malachi Corley needed to go off, and he had 21 of their 35 points. So I think he's definitely a good name to have out there for the helmet stickers.
Well, I think to clear something up real quick, I think the way and just kind of the talk about how our differences and how we pick helmet stickers. So I like to look at the best games of the week and look at the winning team and maybe even the losing team. If there was a great performance on the losing team, like to pick the winners though, obviously. I think it means a lot to win a game, right? So I kind of judge it off when I watch these games, what side of the ball was the most impactful? And then you got to look at who was the most impactful on that side of the ball. So obviously, I think with both of the guys I just talked about, Jane Daniels, Jawar Jordan, it was pretty clear. You could even have given a helmet sticker to the Louisville O-line if you wanted to. I mean, they played well enough in pass pro and in rush pro to do that. But I think the Alabama Texas A&M game was a huge game and definitely worthy of a helmet sticker to be given in that game to someone on the University of Alabama. You could have gone really 4 ways. You could have gone Jalen Milroe at quarterback, who we played his best game of his career. You could have gone Jermaine Burton, his best game at Alabama, kind of becoming the number 1 receiver. Justin Aboybe on the D line, he was great in this game. 5 total tackles, had a sack and a half, had the safety at the end of the game that kind of helped Alabama. But my man, Tim Keenan III, the defensive tackle out of Alabama, was running with the 3s in spring practice this year. Came back after summer into fall camp. Pleasant surprise to the coaching staff, a starter now at the University of Alabama as a redshirt sophomore. He had 8 total tackles, 4 of which were solo, and 1 sack as a defensive tackle against Texas A&M in the SEC. That is hard to do. When we watch NFL games, we got Chris Jones at the Kansas City Chiefs and Aaron Donald, guys who you automatically know defensive tackle, some of the best players on defense in the country, in the world, right? So when you have really good guys up the middle on the D line, I think that makes a huge difference. We've seen it in the NFL. We've seen it in college with some players like in Dominican Sue back when he was playing at Nebraska. Tim Keenan has had a tremendous season kind of out of left field. I mean, no one really saw this coming from this guy. He, like I said, was running with the 3s in spring practice and is now a bona fide starter on this team. What a performance from him. Obviously, a key cog now in the Alabama machine on defense, the national championship caliber defense that we've got. And he's played steady all year, but by far his best game this year. So back-to-back weeks, I've given helmet stickers to a Crimson Tide player, but both times they've been on defense. So, and that's kind of how Alabama's played this year. So Tim Keenan III, congratulations, man. Actually, he sits next to Robert in one of his classes.
Really?
So Robert says he's a great dude. Super happy for him. So number 96 over there on the Bama D line, great guy, even better player. So congrats, Tim Keenan, on another great game.
Yeah, you mentioned how you like to hand out your helmet stickers. I like to look around the league because we review pretty much the same teams every week.
Yeah.
And these are the games that everybody's watching. I mean, everyone watched Alabama, Texas A&M. Everyone watched Texas, Oklahoma. So I like to look around and give it to maybe some players who, had sneaky good weeks and nobody really saw them.
I like both of our philosophies. I think they're both complementary.
But with that being said, I'm going to the game of the week and the player of the week in all around college football. Dillon Gabriel had himself a game, 23 for 38 for 285 with only 1 touchdown. But on the ground is where he impressed me. He had 14 carries for 113 yards and a touchdown. So in total, he had 398 yards with 2 touchdowns. I mean, put the team on his back. And this is what I said they needed to do, what he needed to do. He needed to be the best player in that on that field, and that's what he was. He outplayed Quinn Ewers by a mile, and they only won by 4 because of that. So, I mean, Dylan Gabriel, he's definitely in my top 3 for Heisman finalists right now. And, I mean, he's very, very deserving of this helmet sticker.
And guys, keep a. I would say right now, he's probably my lead guy for the Heisman. I don't want to say anything, but hey, guys, on our preview show this upcoming week, we're going to be ranking our top 4 Heisman guys going in. We're now halfway through the year, so going into week 7. Crazy, we're already halfway through the year. We've talked about that, how fast college football season goes by. But yeah, y'all be looking out for that on our Thursday show. But another good week of helmet stickers. I'm glad we kind of brought back the old college football tradition to a podcast format.
Yeah. Do you want to?
That being said, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. Let's start it. Top 25s every week on our review show. I'll start it off going from 25 to 21. And this week I actually kind of prepared a little bit better for the show, so I kind of can tell you where I had these teams last week. So we're going to start off with 25. Duke at 25, had him at 25 last week. I don't even think they played this past week, but a much needed off week for Riley Leonard, who I guess could play this upcoming week. Probably not, but we'll see. 24, I've got Kansas. They're up. They were unranked last week. I've got them back up to 24. At 23, you'll find this one interesting. I've got Texas A&M. Actually, they haven't moved a spot. Even though they lost last week, I kept them in the same spot as they were. At 22, I've got Louisville. They're now coming up from unranked to number 22 in my thing. And sadly, at number 21, the biggest faller of the week for me, my Washington State Cougars at losing 7 spots from 13 to 21. So actually 8 spots, can't count. So 8-spot loss for Washington State. That's, like I said, I'm very concerned about that, them not having a rushing attack. Very concerned. And Kansas, and another thing for my 24th ranked Kansas Jayhawks, they're not playing with Jalen Daniels. And Jason Bean has really played well. Besides the Texas game, he's played well.
Yeah, it's looking like our rankings will not be anywhere close to the same. There's already 2 teams way different. But with mine, I got one of the teams that's relatively the same. I got Kansas at 25. They were unranked for me. Have them ranked now. Tennessee, they're at 24. They didn't move a spot. And then here's my biggest fall. Washington State dropped 10 spots down to 23. It's just without a run game. I don't know. 22, I still have Missouri. They didn't move. 21, I still have Kentucky. They didn't move. I know Kentucky looked bad this week, but they had a horrible matchup against Georgia. Like we've said, it was a strength versus strength. This is what I expected. So if I get what I expect from a game, I'm not really going to drop them in my rankings. And that's exactly what happened with both Missouri and Kentucky. Well, I thought Missouri was going to win it, but they played that game as close as they could have. So both those teams in the SEC East, I mean, they played kind of opposite as they did to the week prior, but it's what I thought was going to happen.
Well, for 20 to 16, you might find a few of these interesting as well. I've got UCLA up from unranked to now number 20. Very impressed with what I saw. They're going to have some growing pains on offense with Dante Moore, only a true freshman, but he'll end up being a really good quarterback when it's all said and done. And I trust that defense, and I trust Chip Kelly in that run game. So I got to have them at 20. At 19, up 1 spot, I've got Kansas State, even though they lost to Oklahoma State this week. So they had a lot of injuries on that offense that I don't think a lot of people accounted for. A couple on the O-line, a couple receivers. Will Howard's been banged up all year. So I don't really take that much into that game. And honestly, you know what? I'll swap that out a little bit. I'll put UCLA at 19 and put Kansas State at 20. Just because, I don't think that you're right. Like UCLA should be ranked higher than them. At 18, I've got Missouri, who's also up 1 spot. I kind of got exactly what I expected out of them against LSU. So therefore, Brady Cook and that offense still really good. I think they might be, of any team besides Georgia, they might be the team to beat in the East besides Georgia. I really think that the SEC East is going to come down to that game, Georgia-Missouri. Last year, it was a scary game. This year, it's in Athens. Probably not going to be a very scary game, but we'll never know. You never know when you get a really good quarterback going on the road somewhere. At 17, I've got your Oregon State Beavers up 1 spot. And at 16, I've got the Tennessee Volunteers up 1 spot.
Wow. You're a lot higher on Tennessee than I am so far. Yep. My 20, I got Utah. They haven't moved. UCLA finding its way back into the top 25. Sorry, they were at 25th for me last week. But rose 6 spots to number 19 after beating Wazoo. 18, LSU, not going to move them. Got exactly what I expected from them. Notre Dame dropped 9 spots.
Wow.
Sorry, 8 spots down to 17. They didn't look great against Louisville. And, especially because they're not as bad as Washington State one-dimensionally. But, whenever you can't run the football, I think it showed Sam Hartman, doesn't really have what it takes against a great team. And then Duke is up 1 spot just from some of the teams falling. They're at 16 for me.
So at 15 for me, I've got Notre Dame. They fell 5 spots from number 10 to 15, kind of like what you just said. We've talked a lot about that. At 14, I've got LSU rising 2 spots. At 13, I've got Ole Miss rising 2 spots. At number 12, I've got USC losing a spot. And at number 11, a team that I was very impressed to see their performance against Syracuse, North Carolina rising 1 spot. Their offense has been steady all year, and that defense has been a huge surprise. And watch out, Florida State. North Carolina might be the best. North Carolina, I really like this team. And I don't know who I'd pick between them and Florida State right now on a neutral field. I'd probably lean Florida State a little bit because they're a little more proven. They got a little bit more talent around Jordan Travis than Drake May does. But North Carolina is really looking like a really good team over there in the ACC. Probably my second favorite team in that conference.
Now we're getting relatively consistent between our rankings. At my 15, I got them rising 2 spots. Ole Miss, snuck out with a win. Honestly, would have kept them the same. They just rose 2 spots from some of the teams dropping behind them. Number 14, I got USC. They dropped 3 spots.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I know they won, but they were playing a bad Arizona team, and that defense. Like I said, they played Washington close last week. Arizona did. But it was not the same feel of this game. Washington, it never felt like they were ever going to lose. Whereas USC, I think there were 3-4 different moments where I thought they were going to lose. And, good for them. They snuck out a win, but they're not going to be able to do that against elite or even good teams. So that defense, just don't think they're very good at all. Number 13, the biggest difference between you and I have Louisville.
Wow.
I have them? I didn't even have them ranked last week.
Wild. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, obviously, in my opinion, you have to put them above Notre Dame. So that leaves about 4 or 5 spots. And they beat them handily, better than Ohio State did. Granted, like you said, Ohio State was playing them on the road, but still, Louisville looked good. Number 12, I got North Carolina up 3 spots. Was not expecting that from them offensively, and it was great performance for them. Drake May looked like his usual self. And then number 11, up 3 spots as well. I got my Oregon State Beavers. I'm high on them again. I think if they had a rematch against Wazoo, they would handle business.
Well, at number 10, I've got a team, even though they didn't play this week, they dropped 2 spots just because of some other performances this week. I've got Washington Huskies at number 10. I've got the Florida State Seminoles at number 9, dropping 1 spot. I don't think they've been very impressive since the LSU win. And that LSU win, I do have LSU at 14, but it's not as impressive as we thought it all would be, considering LSU's defense. At number 8, I've got Alabama rising 1 spot this week. At number 7, I've got Texas. They fell 6 spots, so second biggest drop for a team. And so that was number 7, Texas. And at number 6, I've got Oklahoma rising 8 spots, the biggest riser of the week from 13 to 6. Very impressed with them. Still think, like I said, need to get a little bit better on defense before I really trust them. Still, I think I would take Texas on a neutral field, but out of respect for them beating Texas, I'm going to put Oklahoma ahead. I do think we get this matchup again in Dallas. It'll be a venue change. It won't be at the Cotton Bowl. It'll be at Jerry's World. And I do think Texas will win that game. I think Oklahoma could lose a game in the regular season, but I think Texas takes control of business and takes care of it. And they get to the Big 12 championship with vengeance on their hand, and I think they'll end up winning the Big 12. So,
at number 10, I got Bama. Got what I expected from them, so kept them the same spot. Number 9, dropped them 5 spots. Got Texas. I got what I expected from them, but I was just putting them in top 5 because I thought they deserved it. Last week was the first time I had them in my top 5, and then as soon as I do, they lose. I know this is a really good Oklahoma team, but this is what I was saying you can just never trust that Texas is back, because they lay an egg sometimes. And this was one of those games where not necessarily laid an egg, but they disappointed when they have Oklahoma beat on every single position.
Yeah.
So number 8, I got Oregon.
Maybe not quarterback.
Maybe not quarterback. Coming into the game, no one was saying that, though. I think Dylan Gabriel is really good. I was saying that. Although I still thought Quinn Ewers was better. But still, you got to go out there and beat them. And like you said, we're probably going to get a rematch. Not probably. We definitely will get a rematch.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing to do is beat a team twice. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Number 8. Number 8, I got Oregon. Didn't move. Number 7, I got Ohio State. Didn't move. I think they beat I don't want to say Maryland's bad, but I don't think Talia is very good at all. We watched that game. Talia's, and I know Ohio State has a really good defense, but dude, Talia is
questionable throws. But you also got to think he has no run game to help him out either. So it's him out there going against Ohio State.
That's true.
And I think for anybody,
I think Talia is an upper echelon Big Ten QB, but that's not saying much. I think he's probably top 5.
He's the 4th best QB in the Big Ten. I mean, behind the big 3,
and that's not saying much. No one really has anyone. But number 6, my biggest riser, second biggest riser. I got Oklahoma at 6. I would still have them favored on a neutral site field against Texas. I think they're that good. I think they can win a national championship. They just have to get their defense a little bit better.
Well, top 5 time for both of us now. I've got Penn State rising 1 spot, sitting at number 5. At number 4, I've got Ohio State losing a spot, down from 3 to 4. At number 3, I've got Oregon going up a spot. At number 2, I've got Georgia up 3 spots from number 5. Very impressed with the win they had this weekend. And at number 1, new number 1 this year, my third team to be featured at number 1, that's Michigan. So it's been Georgia, Texas, and now Michigan at my number 1 spot. Obviously, I know they still haven't really played anyone, but man, have they been consistent all year. I mean, just beating teams to a pulp very easily. Defense looks great. Offense looks great. I got a question for you. Is J.J. McCarthy the best quarterback in this conference? I think he might be. I really think he might be. I would take him over Aller right now. Aller has a better ceiling, I think. But J.J. McCarthy's the most consistent and the best. I think just in total, out of everything, I think he might be the best quarterback in this. And there's no way I'm taking McCord over either one, Aller or McCarthy at the moment. But I mean, do you agree with that? Or
Oh yeah, I mean, that's what I thought coming into the season. Like I said, Big Ten QB's not great. Kyle McCord, when he's your 3rd best QB in the conference, not a great sight.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really only between him and Drew Aller, and Drew Aller just hasn't played tremendous this year. Like you said, has a higher ceiling, but JJ McCarthy, he's very, very solid, very consistent. I don't think he's going to be an absolute game changer. He can go win you a game, don't get me wrong, but
he can lose you one, and we saw it last year.
He can also lose you one. So
yeah.
Don't get me wrong, not a top 5 QB, probably not even top 7 or 8, but is probably the best QB in the Big Ten. So my top 5 unchanged is Washington at 5. Dropping 2 spots, I got Penn State, and then dropping 2 spots, I have FSU. So two top 2 teams in Georgia and Michigan. I have Michigan coming, etching them at number 1. But I mean, if I could, I would have them tied right here because, both of them looked absolutely elite this past weekend. Georgia was playing a much better opponent in Kentucky, but still, I mean, Georgia just hasn't been consistent this year. And, if they constantly show up for big games now. I was talking to some of my roommates. It's funny, before we won a national championship, everyone said Kirby just couldn't win the big games. Now that's seemingly all he does. He just wins the big games. And it's okay if he's not extremely consistent against the unranked opponents. As long as he gets out of there with a win, he proves he's going to cover against the ranked teams, and especially at home. So, I mean, if we can get this version of Georgia for the rest of the season, I can see us three-peating, and, it'll be a great matchup against Michigan if they can continue to do what they're doing.
And I wouldn't have been mad if you even put Georgia at number 1 there because, you have the argument that Georgia's played much better opponents, which they have. I mean, Michigan's played kind of the typical Big 12, Big 10
Minnesota and Nebraska,
which teams are not very good at all. So there's an argument for both of those teams. There's an argument for Oregon. I think Oregon's a complete team. I think those 3 teams three teams I had top in the top three, Michigan, Georgia, and Oregon, are kind of separated from the other ones at the moment, in my opinion, just because I feel like they're more complete right now than all the other teams in college football. And I'll be honest, with the upcoming schedule, the way it's looked, I don't know if my top 10 is going to change way too much. Definitely this weekend, the big game to watch is Oregon Washington. I mean, I have both of the teams in my top 10, and Washington is favored by 3. So I think we all know where I'm standing on that game. I'm going to take Oregon to cover on that. That's kind of a little preview for our preview show on Thursday.
I still got to decide what I'm going to do. I don't really know yet because I have them separated 3 rankings, but it could come down either way.
And home field advantage. Apparently, that Washington Husky Stadium I've heard is different. I've heard it's very loud there. And hey, that could be the difference maker in this game. So you always got to keep that in mind when you're playing in college. The NFL, sure, stadiums can get loud, but it's nothing like college football, and that's why I think it's the greatest sport. Best fans interactions in college football. So
I agree, undoubtedly.
So, guys, another great week 6 of college football. Looking forward to week 7. Looking forward to chatting it up with Jake again later this week, and then another great weekend of college football. We've got homecoming here on the capstone at the University of Alabama, taking on Arkansas. Who does Georgia have this upcoming weekend?
We head to Nashville, so that's where I'm going.
Oh, a very scary game against the Vanderbilt Commodores.
We're on upset alert over here.
I bet you're shaking in your boots, aren't you?
Yeah. We leave for Nashville on Friday morning, so going to be a fun weekend up there. I got a buddy I'm staying up there with for free. So Reagan, if you're watching, appreciate you, dog.
Hey, appreciate you, Reagan. Maybe we'll get a little bit of traction in Nashville while you're up there. Maybe you could, I don't know, tell some Vanderbilt people. We can get the nerds in here on the watching Just Saying. Maybe they'll learn a few things.
I know a couple people that go to Vandy. They don't care about football. They don't care at all. That's why they play in a high school football stadium pretty much.
Yeah, you'll get to see a great jumbotron being held up by a crane right now as we speak too.
No, I'm not going to it. Tickets were $160.
Oh, you're not going to the game. You're just going to Nashville.
Tickets were $160.
Oh,
no. It's because
there's going to be a lot of red and black in that stadium.
I mean, that's the reason why Georgia fans travel. Everyone knows it. And whenever you're going to sit in a stadium that seats like 20,000 right now, the only people buying those tickets are Georgia fans.
Well, I don't think it really matters how many seats are at that Vanderbilt stadium. I mean, when Alabama played them in 2016, it was the same way. And
now it is.
It's going to be the same way it is with Georgia plays them every year. So
it'll be a home game for us.
Yeah. So with that being said, guys, thanks a lot. Please like, subscribe. Hey, even comment. I know we've had a few comments maybe directed at Jake that Jake may not like. I don't know. Some of these Alabama guys aren't really liking Jake Osteen over here. So
that's all right. A lot of
the Florida fans don't like me at Nick. So maybe channel some of your anger into our YouTube comments. But really appreciate you guys watching again. Jake, enjoy doing this with you every week, man. It's been great. Had a really good time. So
yes, sir. Everyone go like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you later. Go Dogs.
Right. Roll Tide, baby. See y'all next week.